Welcome to the Heart of Business podcast. I'm your host, Mo Fatalbab, president of International Facilitators Organization, IFO. Today, our guest is Chuck Hall, chairman of Vitality Global Holdings. And Chuck, I believe we met 25, 30 years ago. Does that sound right?
That sounds about right, Mo. At least 25 years ago. I've been in business closer to 30, so I'm sure it's closer to 30.
Well, that is amazing. Well, welcome to the show. Great to be with you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you. So, Chuck, I think we met when you joined the Entrepreneurs Organization. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, good memory. And it would have been in Chicago or DC, probably Chicago, though.
I think in Chicago, yeah. And your business then was construction?
Construction, real estate and construction. We built and developed senior living.
Yeah. Well, let's go back and just kind of get back to your original entrepreneurial roots. What was your first startup?
Wow. So my first startup, I think the classic entrepreneur story. I cut lawns and had a paper route. My fun story there is, the early days, I would go door to door and sell the services, and I would recruit my brother and the neighborhood friends to do the actual lawn mowing service. My parents raised us. They believed in the basics, right? They owed us a nice house, school, the basics. And if we wanted new cleats, a new bike, if we wanted, those things that we enjoyed, it was up to us to, raise our own money and buy it ourselves. So that was instilled in me from a very early age. If I think about, my recent career, the last 30 years, I was sort of forced into being an entrepreneur again. I had a very successful early career coming out of college, but unfortunately, my ego got way ahead of my abilities. And I was fired. I was fired in July of 98 and had to do
what was your career at that point?
I had worked for a number of very large, some of the world's largest general contractors and construction managers. I had the really unique opportunity to manage work in the Far East and the Middle East, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, Taiwan. Really, really fortunate. I got to be on the team that built St. Jude's Hospital. That was an amazing experience to be around the kids and the families and the doctors. It had Molly and I were married in '89. So she, very gratefully, I'm grateful to her, of course. We had a lot of moves in those first 10 years based on the projects we were put on.
And you were about to say you got fired, and your ego had something to do with it. Tell us more about that.
I like to put it now that my ego was so out of control it wouldn't fit through a double door. And a very humbling experience. Bob Clark, the founder, owner of Clayco, brilliant, amazing human being. Every time I see him at a YPO event now, I thank him for that, for the good old smack in the head, as they say. It brought me back down to earth, really forced me to look at my true talents, my true abilities, and decide what I was going to do with that. And Charles Hall Construction was founded because of it.
Well, it's amazing because there's a lot I want to dig into here. First of all, Bob Clark spoke to an EO event I remember in St. Louis, and he said something that I've never forgotten. He said, in business, I found you're either spiraling upwards or spiraling downwards. There's no status quo.
Yes, that is so true. I mean, Vern has a version of that too, right? It's very similar. Yeah.
And so, so you lost your job, and that was a blessing because it caused you to decide to start your own business.
Right.
And you've never looked back. Do you think you could ever work for someone again?
I don't think so. I'll be way more firm. There's no way I could work for someone else. I am so blessed with what I have today and the partners that I have in the different businesses. I couldn't imagine doing it any other way.
Yeah. So how did you start Charles Hall Construction?
It really got launched. It was in the the early months of trying to figure out what I was going to do, I was interviewing around to test the market. Um, and at the playground with Chase, our son at that time, who was 4 or 5 years old, and a close friend had just landed a senior leadership position with Enron in the Chicago office. And I was telling him what I was looking for. He was telling me some of the needs they had, and I was like, I could offer those services to you. And my favorite story there, Mo, is after a series of conversations, I got this phone call from Eric. He said, "Hey, the leaders from Enron are going to come in from Kansas City and from Texas, and they want to interview you." Well, we had a shared office space at that time. So I made some phone calls to some friends. I had my parents come in, and I filled every empty desk in the place. And as I quickly guided them through the space, I said, "This is so-and-so, and this is so-and-so, and this is what they do, and this is what we do, and let's go to lunch." The whole tour lasted maybe 8 minutes, but we got the deal. And that really helped, launch Charles Hall Construction.
Well, that is a great story indeed. We often hear the phrase ready, fire, aim.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Building the plane as we fly it, as they say.
Yeah. And then tell us about Charles Hall Construction. I know you guys did some big projects. I know it's a pretty significant company. Give our audience a sense of what you all have done.
Yeah, thank you. So we are, from the get-go, we are a national builder, designer, and now owner of commercial real estate, primarily focused on senior living and multifamily apartment buildings. We, between Vitality and Hall, I think we take care of and house something close to 5,000 or 6,000 residents across 14 states. Our largest project we ever built was close to $100 million, 500 plus units. The smallest we've ever built was a memory care community right here in Vernon Hills of Chicago, the Chicagoland area, which had 48. So just about everything in between.
Yeah. And then from that business, I know I've had the pleasure of working with you and your team on a few occasions. What have you seen as the key ingredients to success? So somebody who's listening, who's maybe thinking about starting a business, who has yet to even get going, they hear this and they're like, wow, that is so far away from where I am. What are some of the breadcrumbs to get them there?
First thing that come to mind are my core values, my personal core values, right? It's the things that I center on during the good and the bad. Live to learn, be a friend, walk the talk, and finish strong. Those are my 4 core values. And if I think about, and I do, as you know, quite a bit of coaching and mentoring of young entrepreneurs. I really enjoy doing what others did for me in that time. And the 2 that really come to mind when I'm coaching and mentoring is be a friend and walk the talk. Do what you say, and right, that old notion, and say what you do. Because really, no matter how good you are at what you do, it is more about who you know and how you're able to build trust with who you know, make those commitments with who you know, and deliver. Right, the 5 dysfunctions of Patrick Lencioni. It's really that simple. Much harder in practice, though.
Yeah. And one thing I remember when I talked to you last, you said you spend 70% of your time coaching your team members. Is that right?
Yeah, that's very accurate. It's probably a little bit more now. Across the 7 different business units that we have, I spend the majority of my time thinking about working on strategy and leadership development. And leadership development is truly walking alongside those leaders on their journey as they experience their experiences, and help quicken help them fail more quickly, I like to say.
How did you come to that transition from what might be more of a traditional management role to really leaning into the coaching of your wonderful people?
So it was about 2016, and I was starting to realize, well, I love being in the business, I really enjoy and get just so much heartfelt gratitude out of participating when I work on the business. Right. So when I am focused on a leader, their role, and what the business needs, and I'm able to help them identify that gap. Where are they today? What does the role need them to be today and tomorrow? And I can work with them along that journey. That's just really rewarding to me. So in
Mm.
16, I started this transformation. Um, we read the book Strength to Strength in Forum, spent a lot of time talking about that work and what does it mean and what does the second curve look like. And as you know, from our gathering of Titan Days, myself and three others, once a week, we have an accountability call. And that accountability call is based on our life by design. And so for the last 18 years, I've had a document I've worked towards and rewrote almost every year. What does the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years look like? Well, it was in that 2016, 2018 period. I was taking a really hard look at what does my career look like as I move into my later 50s and into my early 60s. And it was kind of an epiphany moment for me to make that shift.
And that is what the book Strength to Strength talks about, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's shifting from your knowledge that is used and practiced to your sage knowledge. Is that how he calls it? Something like
That's
that.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sage wisdom, right?
Sage.
The wisdom that you can only get through the school of hard knocks.
Yeah. Yeah. And along the way, of course, you have joined a forum, maybe more, an EO forum, perhaps
Yeah.
also a YPO forum.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in forum?
Um, I have been in Forum 20, almost 28 years, some form of a forum. So I was in the first year we created our own forum. I just reached out to a group of friends in Chicago. I didn't know about EO, I didn't know about YPO, and in that first year, it was very helpful. But I needed more, and then I found the EO forum, and I was in that forum for close to 12 years. Um, and some people who played a significant part in my life. Chris Kraus comes to mind. Greg Windsor and Jeff Greaves come to mind. These are gentlemen who took the time. We got to know each other, and most importantly, in Forum, we helped each other with our blind spots. Right? It's what are we missing? What are we not seeing? And how, as a forum mate, can I help you? Either move towards something you're stronger at or work on what it is that is troubling you at that time.
Yeah. What would you say, Chuck, is the forum effect on your life as a whole or your
Oh,
life
wow.
as a professional?
I'm a better husband. I'm a better father. I'm a better friend because of Forum. I mean, I know that sounds, simple, but as I'm a better father, and because my kids have participated in Y&G, because I am more, I'm more giving, I'm more aware, and Forum helped me create a better balance in my life. Just as one example, so that I was there for the kids more often than I probably would have been.
And that's a lot for somebody who works as much as you do. That says a
Yeah,
lot, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Chuck, let's go back to something you said earlier, actually, about your upbringing. And I'm wondering if your kids had the same luxury of having to work hard to get what they need beyond the basics. Because one thing I'm seeing in, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was just different. We didn't have as
Yeah.
much abundance as we do today. And I don't know how you grow up with such abundance and say to your kids, hey, sorry, you got to make your own way. So, how was that different than the way you grew up,
Yeah.
and how do you think it'll impact them?
Uh, well, I think the biggest difference in was I was aware. So growing up, my dad worked three jobs. He had a full-time job as a manager and two other jobs that were entrepreneurial. My mom was entrepreneurial. So the only way I saw my parents was if I went to work, either on the docks with my dad, if I was pumping gas or doing whatever, or in the boat working on the water, fixing or doing things around marinas, or my mom selling real estate, right? So They didn't come to my soccer games. They didn't participate in coaching. It just, that just wasn't the way. The other thing, and I am who I am because of this, but there wasn't a focus on scholastics. School and homework fell below earning money, playing sports. And then there was a focus on school. And I didn't really realize until what I was missing until later in high school. Fortunately, I got my act together. So I'm very fortunate to have married a really smart woman. Molly is brilliant. And together, work ethic, she has a fantastic work ethic. Her upbringing where school was important, education was number one, and the work ethic that I brought to to our marriage. I'd like to believe our kids had a great exposure to both. I opened the first office just down the street from their elementary school, so the kids could get out of school, they could come in, they could work around the office, emptying trash, doing cleanup, doing odd jobs, and they would get an allowance from our controller, Kathy. And then they would go off and spend it on candy, or in Chase's case, he ate more his body weight a day, it seemed like. So he would take it, buy a sandwich in town. And Mo, I have the benefit now. Chase is 35, Sarah's 29. Very successful careers, very grounded in who they are and what they want out of their career, and they're on their way to developing their own families. So Molly and I feel like we've succeeded there and helping them along the way.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I'm struck by the entrepreneurship in your family. So you came from an entrepreneurial family. How much did that impact your choices as it went? So first you got a job, and then you're like, maybe not.
So I love this question. When I look back over my life, over my career, there were some definite milestones that my upbringing in an entrepreneurial family made a significant difference. I started school at Roger Williams College, transferred to the University of Cincinnati in my sophomore year. That was the year, 86, that Reagan enacted the luxury tax. My dad's business fell apart, and unfortunately, he had to claim bankruptcy. And I got the phone call from Mom, "Hey, you got to come home." Well, at that point in my life, I had the confidence that I could support myself. I was already pretty much paying my own way, but I had the confidence that I could say, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to figure out how to make it work, because Cincinnati was having a big impact on me at the time I had met Molly. It's where we met. So that was one significant point, making the decision to not run home, but to stay put. I started my own business, carpentry, doing that sort of thing. The flash forward to that moment when I was fired. I had the confidence. My toughest sell was Molly, right? We had a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old at home. We had a new house. I had to sell her on the idea that I can do this. She knew I could do it, but it was, the issue was home care or healthcare. And then the next big significant moment was when you've met Chris, my partner, Chris Gay, he approached me to join him in the ownership of Vitality. I am not a healthcare person. My whole career has been in real estate and construction, but I was willing to commit the time to learn the business of senior living. And one of the best moves I've ever made, certainly one of the best investments I've ever made.
In what ways is senior living different, which I'm sure is very different than just plain old construction? What is it? What has it brought to you?
A deep rooted satisfaction. Growing up, my mother's parents lived in basically supportive housing. They were factory workers. They couldn't afford the true senior living like we know it today. And I didn't know it then, but working on that St. Jude's Hospital, seeing how I can make a difference in the lives of others, not just through bricks and sticks, but truly through what I do. And then joining Chris, walking in a memory care. I used to have some really nice red hair, and I'd walk into a memory care unit, and if someone had a redhead in their family, I became their family member, and I would get a huge hug. Or visiting our teammates and the leadership and seeing how they're making a difference in the lives of others. It really touches me to know that I'm making a difference for someone else's family that wasn't there for my grandparents.
Yeah. Beautiful. I always find there's a connection, right? There's a
Yeah,
reason. There's a
yeah,
reason. So Chuck, I love all the just great stories and the success and the connecting it back to family and how you've impacted your children. What about the tough times? Can you think of one or two examples where there was a tough time and maybe your forum helped you?
yeah, for sure. So the first that comes to mind was the crash of between 2008 and 2013.
Mm,
I was really fortunate. My forum, we got together and we literally had the conversation of, right, we're not driving new business. What are you going to do to sustain it? One of my friends said, I'm going to pull my Rolodex out and I'm going to clean up my Rolodex and I'm going to connect with, this. I had a friend who focused on processes and procedures and how is he going to, really settle in to drive his business. I did a little bit of both. This is when I really did my serious core value work. Um, and where I really doubled down on my relationships within senior living.
mm,
And it's crazy as it seems to me today, we doubled our business through that downturn and we increased our fees through that downturn because of Forum, because of that support network, the trust we had in each other. And, they knew my blind spots. They knew where to support me or where to kind of, kick me in the rear. So that's one. The second is the pandemic.
mm.
So it's in the pandemic, we have the construction company. It is now, multi regions, very large. We're doing deals, with our good friend Chris Johnson out in New Jersey is one
Oh yeah,
example.
yeah.
We're delivering projects that are north of $80 million each one.
Mm,
So I have that going on. We have Vitality, which is now a couple of years in the making. We've got a couple of thousand lives under care, and we have 1,500, 1,200 employees. And the pandemic hits. I did the first thing I did in March of that 19 was I reached out to the YPO network, so much broader than just my forum.
mm,
And I said, hey, once a week, we're going to have a phone call and it's going to be an hour and 20 minutes. The
mm.
first 20 minutes is your top 1%, your bottom 1%. We're going to create a parking lot and we're going to spend the rest of the call going through each other's parking lot. What are we learning from the government? What are we learning from our local health department? What are we learning from each other? And we would take that away. And so that forum of, upwards of 30 or 40 people each week, we got each other through the pandemic. One friend turned his factory in China into completely the masks and the gowns that we needed. Someone else had access to other pieces. Someone else had access to. We had a forum mate who had direct access to the White House, so we knew right away what policies were coming out, so we could make immediate adjustments for our residents and our team members. Uh, I think I would be in a very different place if I didn't have YPO and Forum, because just as in that one example.
That is a great example. So, would you say you thrive in chaos? It seems like in both of those examples, you've come out better off.
I definitely thrive under pressure. I Because of my upbringing, I remain pretty calm in difficult situations. I have patience. I'm very curious in those difficult times. So rather than getting angry or frustrated or being, you know, captured by anxiety, I'm able to look at that fear and anxiety and say, what is it about that that's making me anxious? And I can work on it. So so definitely, it's, uh, I don't sweat like most people do in hard situations.
It's a great lesson for all of us because the same event happens and people have different emotions and different
Mm-hmm.
reactions. And
Yeah.
some people buckle under and some people are like, no, 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 it's time to go, time to get to work.
One of my favorite books on this subject is The Surrender Experiment.
Mm,
This notion of working on the business or working on the business, or are you working in the business, right? To me, working on the business is the willingness to literally let go and trust in the people that you've coached and mentored, trust in the processes you've created, because collectively we're so much smarter than just me individually, right? So if I'm driving my business white knuckled and I'm only focused on what's immediately in front of me in that little box, anxiety, fear, right? Spending way too much energy without other resources. And Surrender Experiment, the book, it was literally this notion of, all right, I'm gonna open myself up to and be grateful for those that are in my lives and let them influence where we're going and how we're getting there.
Mm, beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
So Chuck, thinking about the future, what's next? So you have a 10, 15-year plan, I'm sure. And before you get to that, again, somebody listening might think, well, this guy could retire. So what keeps him going?
What keeps me going is I love what I do. I'm out of bed most mornings, 5:30 without an alarm clock, straight into my workout. And I am driven by the people I work with. So as long as I feel like I'm contributing to the greater good of our team members, I can see myself being engaged for another 10 years. To me now, it's how can I help those that are my partners and our leaders get somewhere they might not otherwise get, whether that's financially or personally or professionally. My 10-year plan, which it just so happens that I will be presenting on that with my Gathering of Titans forum in a couple of weeks, looks like the 5 to 7 years future, we're still growing. We have our next fund in mind that actually starts to bring together the idea of multifamily and the idea of senior living. We call it active adult. This continuum, this opportunity where someone in their late 50s, early 60s can really live and thrive and know that they can be cared for through their end of life. So that's a big passion of mine. And then as I think about 7 to the 15 years, I want to remain engaged in mentoring. I want to remain engaged in coaching, and I'd like to remain at a board level. Molly and I are starting to talk about things like, hey, wouldn't it be neat if we spent 30 days in pick a country, right? And we're talking about, hey, wouldn't it be neat if we could take a couple of weeks and take our grandchildren to a dude ranch? So a lot of that is in our planning for the future.
Yeah, sounds lovely. So Chuck, back to your entrepreneurial roots. Did your parents have a chance to see your success?
They have, and they both are still alive. And one of my favorite moments over the last couple of weeks was at our daughter Sarah's wedding. Dad's 86 and mom's 81. It's pretty tough arthritis. He worked with his hands his whole career and his back. He was out on the dance floor, and we were enjoying the moment together as a family, celebrating Sarah and Alex, and to see the smile on his face, enjoying that moment, just so precious.
Beautiful, beautiful,
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Chuck, one last piece of wisdom that you could share, something that you live by, something that just is a reminder for you when things aren't necessarily working the way you expect. What do you rely upon?
The first thing that comes to mind, Mo, is be curious. And with curiosity brings information. It helps a situation unfold. It helps alleviate assumptions, which are often deal killers.
So ask more questions, learn more before jumping to assumptions.
And be open to really understand the human being that's in front of you and the journey they've been on. And if you can make that kind of time in difficult situations, I find 9 times out of 10, the situation ends up successful.
Chuck Hall, what a pleasure. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your openness. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. And thank you to our audience. As a reminder, podcast reviews have a real impact on podcast visibility. So if you liked today's episode, please give us a review. And you could find all our episodes on our website at internationalfacilitatorsorganization.com. Thank you for listening and watching, and have a great day.